A few years ago, I was driving back to Saskatchewan from BC, and on the highway, all of a sudden, I got this overpowering feeling that I'd taken a wrong turn and I was going the wrong way and I should turn around. Now, I didn't do that because I hadn't taken any turns and it was a straight highway. And no matter how I felt, I was not about to turn back because I knew darn fine I was going in the right direction. But I felt this tremendous feeling of going the wrong way. Well, when I got back, uh, I joined the coffee crowd at a town just north of here, and we were sitting around, um, and I brought up this subject. I was driving back from BC, and a friend of mine said, "Was that by blah 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 blah?" And it was a certain particular spot on the highway. And I said, "Yeah, it was right there." He said, exactly the same thing happened to me. I was driving back from BC, heading back to Saskatchewan. Well, some people overheard us and they had had the same experience in the same spot. They had had this. Now, I suspect it has something to do with uh, magnetic lines or something like that, and passing a magnetic boundary, and suddenly your brain decides it's going in the wrong direction because it's past a boundary of some sort. Like, apparently humans can teach themselves to follow the Earth's magnetic lines the same as other animals can. Maybe not everybody, but some people can. So I suspect it has something to do with that. However, back in '87, a friend and I were taking the bus to Toronto from the lower mainland. And we were sick of the depression out in BC. We were going out to get jobs, woo, as we were saying all the way out there. And there was this one city we got to, and we got off the bus. We went looking around, and we were in the industrial area, which was the entire east side of this city. And there was a restaurant, sort of a diner that we'd gone to. And the next day, something very strange happened. There was no industrial section on the east side of the city. We couldn't find that diner. It's as though it never existed. Now, it would be one thing if it was just myself, but it was both of us, and we both had this experience. And this isn't the only time that's happened to me. And I know other people that this has happened to. Um, how do you explain things like this? I have no idea. Back when I was a young guy, a young adult, um, we figured out by accident how to see auras. And, oh, no magic, everybody can see them. And I began to suspect that they weren't actually something that you were seeing um, around hands, especially, and around heads, I began to suspect it had something to do with reflected light and something to do with optics. And I suspected it had something to do with the workings of the eye itself, because just about every aura, so called aura, I've ever seen has been blue, different colors of blue. Except for a few people, like one fellow, he had a sort of a yellowish, greenish color, and thought at the time maybe it's something to do with. Uh, it's not visible, but maybe it's something to do with his pigmentation or something like that. And then one time, a girlfriend of mine and I were sitting at a park bench in Stanley Park in Vancouver, and there were a pair of auras, and there was nobody to generate them. Auras without people. Now, years later, a friend and I were walking around the seawall at night in Stanley Park, and we got to Siwash Rock, and a very strange thing happened. Not a strange thing then, it didn't mean anything to us. Well, we got to Siwash Rock, and there was a rock to the right of Siwash Rock. And when I was a kid, when I was a small kid, teenagers used to swim out to that rock and sit on it. And there was a plaque telling you that this was Siwash Rock, and the other rock, it had two names. It was either called the Hat, or it was called the Little Brother, or something like that. So lo and behold, a few years later, I end up in Toronto. And my buddy and I are out just for old time's sake. We're walking around the seawall. And we get to Siwash Rock. And we come to the plaque, and it's changed. And the plaque makes no mention of the Hat or the Little Brother. And the rock is gone. We looked in disbelief. We had been to that rock. We had swum out to that rock. We had sat on that rock with our friends when we were partying in Stanley Park at night. And there the rock was gone. And we thought, well, maybe they took it out for, maybe it was dangerous for boats or something. Maybe they took it out. And only to find that it never existed. It was never there. Now, before we went to Toronto, it was there. We got back from Toronto and it was gone. Something had changed. This is something else that I mentioned to some friends of mine. And an old friend of mine north of here came up to me and he says, I've had that exact same experience. You're traveling, and all of a sudden, something feels off, and something has changed. And in his case, somebody disappeared out of his life, a relative. He couldn't bring to mind who they were, but he had this overwhelming feeling that there was somebody in his life that was very important to him that was suddenly gone. And that was after he'd been traveling. Now, I know 3 people who have had this exact same experience. You travel, and it's like somewhere in there, something goes off the rails, something jumps, something skips. And it's only when you travel long distances, thousands of miles, and you can't go back to your original reality. Now, I don't know if this is a psychological phenomenon. Um, Psychiatrists and psychologists probably have a name for this. I mean, they explain away deja vu with some pretty persuasive sounding arguments, but um, I'm not the only one who knew about Siwash Rock. My buddy who I went to back east with, we had the same experience. And I've since come across other people who have noticed the absence of the hat or the little brother. And I've kept mum about it for the most part all these years because I don't like looking like a fool. Um, I do not believe in paranormal stuff or parapsychology. I do not believe in UFOs or ghosts or any of that stuff. But I have experienced some weird things I can't explain. And other people have had the same exact experience. So, what's going on here? I'll probably never know. Um, and it's something we'll just have to let it go and wonder about it every so often. But if you've had an experience like this yourself, I'd like to hear from you in the comments section. Maybe share and see how many of us have had experiences like this, and if there's a name for this kind of thing, like just odd things that happen out of the blue. Ta ta.